Our goal was to have a Jello pool party in his backyard that would make even Phineas and Ferb jealous. So the plan was to start 7 days before the party and fill the pool with an average of 10 barrels every day. That would give each layer a chance to get exposed to the cold night air to more efficiently get rid of the heat. And so with that, first thing Saturday, a full week before the party, we got to work. We didn't want to waste actual food, so this is just water and gelatin powder and food coloring, but there's no sugar. We intentionally placed our barrels much higher than the pool, so when we were ready, we could use the potential energy to move the Jello from the barrels to the pool. We had to tackle about 1,000 other issues that came up that I won't bore you with, but day by day, and layer by layer, the pool began to fill up. Because the Jello went in with so much heat energy we needed to remove before it could get firm, in addition to using the cold night air, my brother's neighbor Nick happened to have a spare swamp cooler in his shop, so we kept that running over the top of the pool pretty much the whole week. This gave us convection cooling. It's the equivalent of rolling down a car window for the pool, or like when you blow on the top of a hot cup of soup. This constantly replaces the boundary layer of air right at the surface with fresh cold air that will suck out the heat more efficiently. And so as we put in the final batch Friday night, with ominous weather threatening to ruin the whole effort, at this point, we had done all we could. We were exhausted after a week, and I wasn't feeling super confident because my specialty is more of mechanical things, and this project was more about chemistry and thermodynamics. And I didn't want that lame jelly boss stuff people try and pass off as Jello, and so even if it didn't last long in the sun, I wanted to at least have the experience of seeing even a single belly flop on a smooth pool of actual Jello. If this was going to be a total failure, it wouldn't be from lack of effort. And so we woke up Saturday morning with a forecast for a warm, sunny day, and we pulled off the tarp to find a pool filled with actual freaking Jello. And by this point, word in the neighborhood had definitely spread around as to what we were up to, and my brother asked if some of their friends' kids could have first dibs. And so with that, I'm happy to report this is what it looks like to belly flop in a pool of Jello. When I first got in myself, it was closer to the middle of the day, and one of the things we discovered was that direct sunlight over time had the effect of undoing some of the solidness of the lower layers. when you go in, it just like fills your nose and like ears. It's a very surreal feeling of just being like, it's kind of hard to move, but it's just slimy and slippery. It actually feels really cool. We have some pool toys hidden underneath. Got it! Wow! Unlike anything, it's like swimming in snot, if that makes any sense. But like a good snot. To keep it solid for even longer, if we were to do it again, we might put in a heat exchanger pipe system beneath the surface, sort of like how they freeze indoor ice skating rinks. And maybe use a little sugar. That's disgusting. Now at this point you might be thinking, why would anyone spend the effort of 6 months of planning and then a solid week of back-breaking effort just to make a stupid pool of Jell-O? And to that I say, why do people go through the effort of climbing Mount Everest? Why did Neil Armstrong go through the effort of stepping on the moon? And why did Pam and Jim go through the effort of convincing Dwight that Jim had always been Asian?
This is Jim.
Sometimes you don't do a thing because you should, but simply to prove that you can. Now that my curiosity was fully satiated, and in my ongoing quest to be the favorite uncle, I told my nephews they can invite some of their friends over, and my brother's family set up a neighborhood barbecue. And at this point, after a lot of hours of belly flops and bowling balls and direct sunlight, the Jell-O was pretty broken down, but that didn't stop us from setting up a Jell-O pool slip and slide. And I loved their sense of adventure, but it was a bit of an uncle fail moment because apparently none of them have ever used a slip and slide. Didn't actually put any sugar in here, so it's kind of disgusting. So we've got some real sugar. This is a rocket-powered golf club. Professional golfers have an average swing speed of 110 miles per hour, but using 2 F-size motors, she swings at 150 miles per hour every time. Usually for builds on my channel, I just show you guys the final thing and don't really talk about the process of how we got there. And rest assured, today we will get to see huge drives, whoa! Golf balls shattering glass in super slow-mo, pulverized watermelons, and even a handheld version. But this build, I think, is a great chance to pull back the curtain and demonstrate how the engineering design process actually works. I want to highlight 6 learning opportunities that led us to this final design. And to do that, we need to go back in time 4 months to when I first had the idea. And as always, we started with a simple prototype to see if the concept even had a remote chance of working. But before we fire it up, you'll notice we have counterweights on the opposite side here. That's so that the center of mass of the spinning part is on top of the axis of rotation. In other words, it balances perfectly at the point at which it spins around. If you don't do that for something that spins, it creates a bunch of extra force for your system to deal with. It starts as a small vibration, but then it gets worse and worse as you pick up speed. Since we need to hit this tiny ball with the head of this club at really high speeds, if we're not perfectly balanced, the club and the whole platform itself would just be shaking all over the place and we'd never hit it. Okay, back to the test. Those stands are shaking more than they should, so we knew we would need to balance the spinning part better for the real test, but at least we knew it could go kind of fast and nothing blows up. And so then it was time for CAD, which is always the next step. And then together with my friends Ken and Kayla, we started cutting metal and making stuff. Things came together well, so we epoxied a 3D printed motor mount to the top of the driver and prepped our first real test by taking one of those easy ups and draping some nets on the side for safety, just in case something went catastrophically wrong. This was our second learning experience. We didn't have enough contact area for epoxying the head to the driver, so it wasn't a strong enough bond. This was tricky because it meant we had to 3D scan the club head, which allowed us to CAD up and then 3D print a more contoured mount with more contact area for the epoxy. We also took this chance to double the rocket bolsters because what could possibly go wrong? So we went to test our new dual rocket setup with 2 E-motors and everything went perfectly. Except for the part where the head snapped off the driver. And when we reviewed the slow-mo footage, what we realized was the shaft of the driver is so flexible that it would start to bend and then create really weird thrust vectors for the rockets, which then just bent the shaft even more. This is not what you want to see. Eventually this exceeded the stress limit of the shaft and the head just came off. So our third learning opportunity was to stiffen up the club shaft. So we got some aluminum C-channel and just dumped a butt ton of epoxy in there, and this worked remarkably well. You can see the difference here. And so with that, we headed out to a very remote shooting location in beautiful Northern California. So we finally arrived and started to set up, but first, I had something I wanted to get off my chest. So one of the things I like most about me is that I like to reach out to lesser known channels and sort of give them a handout and some exposure on my channel, which is why today I'm here with Destin, Smarter Every Day. And if by some miracle you don't know, Destin is on the Mount Rushmore of science YouTubers. We've been friends for almost exactly 6 years, and I know this because I took a screenshot of the huge moment for me when he subscribed to my channel when I only had 10,000 subs. He's made videos about the physics of cats landing on their feet, tattoos in super slow-mo, or the first video I saw of him about how chickens have an internal open feedback loop which allows them to head track. If you've never seen his stuff, I'm actually jealous because you have so many hours of high-quality viewing in your near future. So, I like golf. I like rockets. Should we do this?
Yeah, it's just, that was the intro, right?
That was it.
Whatever.
So we all continued to set up, and something that was important to me was for this to look as natural as possible at a driving range. So we added some turf to cover the base plate, and then dissected a golf bag to cover the sturdy steel column. And then if you add some clubs, it looks pretty awesome. It's incredibly rigid, and yet it can still swing freely. Our fourth learning experience came from reviewing our final test footage. If you listen, the club goes faster and faster with each rotation. Naturally, we want the club to contact the ball when it's going the fastest, which in our case is 10 rotations in 1 second. That means we somehow need to sneak the ball into the path of the driver in less than 1/10 of a second, or 1/4 of an eye blink. To accomplish this, we have a pneumatic cylinder here that hinges up the tee. It knows when to fire because on the back of the shaft there's a light sensor, and this disc has a slit which allows the light to pass through once per rotation. So we send that info to an Arduino over here that counts for us, and then after 15 rotations, it tells the cylinder the precise moment to fire using a solenoid. And then we superglue the ball to the tee because it provides the Goldilocks amount of force to first secure and then release the ball. Plus, the superglue looks super dope in slow-mo. So now with everything in place, we started with 2 E-motors, which as a reminder is the same setup that ripped the club head off. 3, 2, 1, roll! Yo, what happened? That's a cool shot right there, dude.
Dude, this is respectable. This is legit.
After reviewing more of the high-speed footage, we noticed something interesting.
The sound effect there is like yoing yoing yoing.
This was an interesting technical observation from Destin, and that T flexibility was causing us to hit some bad shots like this. An obvious fix is just to make the T more rigid so that it doesn't over-rotate when it pops up. But there's a problem with this. There's a saying that force follows stiffness, and for us, a really stiff T would transfer a bunch of force and destroy our nice 3D printed pop-up mechanism. Now imagine this crumpled up piece of paper as the T, which is obviously way less stiff. Our flexible rubber T was great because it acted like this piece of paper. No matter how hard you hit it, the force doesn't get translated down and damage our hardware. So Kent had the brilliant idea of just tying a string to the T and staking it into the ground. This stopped the over-rotation, but everything was still just as flexible.
When the string pulls tight, does it make the ball fly off because it doesn't doink enough?
Only way to test is a doink test.
Beautiful. There was some doinkage.
I just thought this was a really simple, clever idea that solved both problems at once, and as you can see, it worked perfectly. Now we're ready to try a dual F motor. So these deliver about twice as much force to the club as the E motors that made the head snap off. And this provided our final and certainly most poignant learning opportunity.
1, go! Where's the club? Where's the club? It's the tree on fire? Wow. Like I'm laughing, but that could have been bad. Here we go. This thing was like suborbital, dude. So we have 3 U-bolts. Yeah, so I think we'll just max out those and just crank them way down now that we know this is a failure point. Now that we know this is a failure point, there's several failure points, and I hear you say, "Oh, we have a solution for that." This is the engineering design process. It's rather fun.
Like I mentioned, the club that failed was cut too short, and therefore only attached using 2 U-bolts, which we thought would have been enough to support the 800-pound load from centrifugal force. We did notice the rubber handle was worn due to so many test fires, which probably initiated the stress concentration leading to the failure. So our fix was to cut the next club longer so we could use 3 U-bolts and really crank them down on a fresh rubber handle. And so with all 6 of our learnings now in place, we tried the insane double F motors one more time.
Go! Whoa! That's 3-point goal! That's our best one yet. Dude, like the rush you get from like an engineering achievement actually working is like seriously, dude. Oh, look at the blades. Oh.
So we never found these long balls to measure the exact distance, but I can drive a ball 280 yards, and these were well beyond that. I mean, just look at this trajectory straight to outer space. Now that we got all the shots we needed, it was time to have some real fun. We started with a handheld version that was powered by a single C motor, because anything more than that would just be way too unsafe for me to hold.
Nice!
I won 300 yards, man! It really did, like, make it so much easier to swing. I'm not even kidding. Yeah. Like, it really made a difference. 3, 2, and then some glass, just because. And then keeping with the tradition of my channel, some watermelon.
Thanks for cutting open a watermelon with a Rocky Tower Golf Club, Mark.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's all of this. The past 3 months of work in engineering was just to
Boils
enjoy,
down to this moment.
just to enjoy this watermelon.
Yeah, Mark's like trying to make stuff look good. We're not wasting food though.
We waste no part of the engineering effort, like the great Indians with the buffalo. So Dustin made a video on his channel about why some balls bounce high and others don't. And my first thought was, well, that's easy. It just has to do with how compressible or rubbery it is. Yet this billiard ball is pretty much completely solid, and this bouncy ball is pretty rubbery. And yet they bounce to pretty much the same height. So it's something else. As you can imagine, this is a pretty important piece of information for golf ball makers. So there's lots of amazing slow-mo footage of golf balls being squished in ways that hurt your brain, plus way more footage from today's shoot, so I will leave a link in the video description. And while you're there, make sure to check out some of his other videos and subscribe to his channel, because he's just a classy individual and a true professional in every sense of the word.
Are you rolling? Yeah. Hey, it's me, Mark.
No steal. There's no steal there. I predict not a steal. Watch this. And he stayed. He's gonna steal. This is a steal. If this app works, this kid's about to steal. There he goes. There he goes. Freaking works. It works. 2 years ago, I came up with an idea for an app where you could decode baseball signs so you would know when the other team was going to steal, even after just the first inning. Then, in a covert effort to get people more interested in coding and machine learning, I would make the app free and available to everyone. I'm happy to report, it's no longer just an idea. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how the app works and we'll use it in the wild, and then we're going to talk about machine learning in very simple terms with my buddy Jabril. But first, to set the stage, we need to understand the fascinating world of secret baseball signs. It's the game within the game. Most people know the catcher will give signs to the pitcher when your team is on defense, but when you're on offense, the third base coach gives signs to both the batter and the base runner. For example, he could secretly tell the batter to bunt, or to not swing at the next pitch, or he can tell the base runner to steal. And just to be clear, stealing a base is when you start running as soon as the pitch is thrown, instead of waiting for the batter to try and hit it. It's risky because if the batter doesn't hit the ball and the catcher's good, he can throw you out at second base. Because it's a big advantage, coaches will actually tell their players to watch and see if they can figure out the other team's signs. That's considered fair play and it's part of the game. The problem is, our brains aren't great at figuring out the complex patterns. So we set out to create an app that would use machine learning to do exactly that. And by we, I mean Jabril actually sat down and wrote the code, and I just made sure he had unlimited Cheez-Its and LaCroix. Here's how it works. If I saw a coach touch his nose, ears, arm, chin, and so on, I would assign those to letters in the app. Then I would just watch him sign and record the order. After that, I would just let the app know the outcome. So was it a steal or not? After you do this for enough sequences, the app will start to make predictions. In this case, it's predicting the combination of AD, or nose, then chin, is their steal sign. This worked well enough on my workbench, so now it's time for the first real-world test in a kids versus adults wiffle ball game. And my friend Sarah takes the game of wiffle ball pretty seriously, so she was the captain of the kids team and was signaling for them to steal at just the right moment. And I wasn't sure on the ethics of using our app against a bunch of little kids, but they were scoring runs and stealing bases with impunity, and then they got so confident, they started talking trash. And no one says that about my pitcher, so at that point, the gloves came off. We found it easiest to film her signs with our phone, and then scrub through and capture the order in the app afterwards, as opposed to trying to do it real time. And I'm very happy to report we cracked their code after only 3 sequences. And what's cool is once you know the code, you no longer need the app because you can just watch for the steal signal, and when we saw it, we alerted our pitcher with the secret sign of our own. After that, the tides of the game shifted, and we were able to officially prove adults rule and kids drool. So our app cracked the code after just 3 sequences, and I'm going to show you them to see if you can figure out the steal sign using just your brain. Here's the first one, and this was a steal. Here's the second, and this was no steal. And this is the third, and it was a steal. Pause and go back if you want to try and figure it out, because I'm about to tell you the answer. According to the app, which Sarah later confirmed, their steal sign was only if she touched her hat and then left ear back to back. Everything else was just a decoy. Now before we tell you exactly how the app can figure this out so quickly, we need a little background information. So I've cornered my buddy Jabril here, and I'm going to make him give us a super simple explanation of machine learning. Now here's what you should know about Jabril. He's basically a genius who taught himself how to code when he was 14. He has an amazing YouTube channel you should check out with videos like this one, where he made a video game where the character teaches himself how to navigate any maze using machine learning and neural networks.
Alright, let's say we have Timmy here. And Timmy likes certain type of toys, but not others. So in our fake example here, he decides it's based on how big the toy is and how complicated it is. So, from small to big, and then over here, how many parts it has from just one piece to a really complex toy with gears and moving parts and things like that. And so, if we ask Timmy about 20 different toys and start to plot those on the graph, we'll start to see a pattern. So generally, he likes toys that are big and complicated, but does not like toys that are small and simple. And so, by looking at his past preferences, we can make really good predictions for the future. If you show little Timmy here a toy that is this complicated and this big, we're confident that he'll like it before we even show it to him because it is inside the like boundary. That's the big deal with machine learning. We don't have to take the time and show little Timmy here every toy that's ever been created and record his answers. After we record some likes and dislikes, we're able to draw some boundaries. And precisely where we draw these boundaries is the secret sauce. In this case, with just 2 inputs, you can just eyeball it and see where to put the boundaries. But when you have thousands of inputs that interact with each other, it's impossible for our brains to comprehend where those boundaries should go. However, it's pretty trivial for a computer using machine learning.
In doing research for this video, I talked to probably over 50 baseball players and coaches. And when we asked about signs, it was surprising to me how they all basically use the same strategy. See if you could pick up on it.
Every coach has an indicator. I have an indicator so I can do all this, random stuff like this, touch anywhere. Until I touch this, none of that matters.
So it'd be indicator, and the next sign, that's a hot sign. So it's indicator, arm, steel. If I just do arm, that's nothing.
Oftentimes I'll give this, Simon didn't say. If I go indicator, and then immediately to anywhere on my arm, steel. Bunt is to the bell, indicator to the bell.
So basically nothing matters and it's all a decoy until they touch the indicator. And then the very next sign is the instruction. So after the indicator, you might be told to bunt, or to take a pitch, or to steal. And so since the steal sign comes immediately after the indicator, we just look at a sequence where a steal was recorded. Here that's showing as 1. Then we look through that sequence 2 letters at a time and store those combos. Then we do the same thing for all the sequences where a steal was recorded, and whatever 2-letter combo shows up in all of them is their indicator and steal sign. In this case, it's AD, so if we decode that, that means nose is their indicator and chin is their steal sign. Now I have a confession. What I just showed you doesn't use machine learning at all. It's just a simple algorithm we realized would work once we discovered that pretty much all teams will use an indicator directly before giving the real sign. But based off all the people we talked to, if you're trying to decode signs, this simple version should work like 90% of the time. But what about the other 10%, where they do anything other than indicator followed by sign? That's where you need machine learning, because if done properly, machine learning can crack any code as long as you give it enough training data. So to really see how good Jabril's machine learning app was, I generated some training data based off an insanely complicated steal sign I came up with to see if he could figure it out. So my secret sign was a mustache rub as the indicator, followed by any random sign, and then a tooth tap as the steal sign. Then I can have up to 50 different signals in each sequence, and then to throw them off even more, if I ever touch my right eyebrow, it's not a steal. So you ignore everything in the sequence, even if I've already given the steal sign. Now, just to set the stage, if we weren't going to use machine learning, this would take a normal computer thousands of years to solve. Because it's the same as if you're asking Timmy about every toy ever made, instead of just drawing the boundaries. Before we see if Jabril can successfully crack my code, and how long it will take him, let's just go one layer deeper than the Timmy toy example, and see how machine learning mimics the human brain in creating neural networks that can draw those boundaries in the more complicated case of more than 2 inputs. There are 3 main parts to a neural network, and hang with me here because I'm going to keep this simple. You have the input layer, which in our case are the signs being given, and then way over here you have the output layer, in our case steal or no steal, and then in the middle we have the hidden layers, and right now that's just a black box. So if the sign was hat, hat, nose, hand, we would tweak these input knobs like this. Depending on how each of these knobs is turned, each one is interconnected with the knobs to its left. So it causes some simple math to occur at each node, and when you sum up all of those numbers, you're left with a number between 0 and 1. And if that number is really close to 0, that's no steal, and if the number is really close to 1, that's a steal. So you give it a bunch of training data where, given an input, you know what the output should be. And you start with these hidden layer knobs turned in totally random directions, and when you add them all up, you get something like 0.55. Well, that doesn't make sense. You can't have half a steal. And more importantly, with the training data, you know the answers, and you know that this combination should have been a steal. So you just start tweaking these hidden layer knobs until you start to get outputs that are more correct over time. And after going through a bunch of examples where you know what the answer should be, eventually you get to a point where any more tweaking of the knobs just makes it less accurate, so you stop. So now you super glue these 3 hidden layer knobs into place because you've trained your model. well. And so now with a brand new input where you don't know the answer, it gives you the correct output. In this case, a steal. Of course, this is the simple model, but this scales up. So you could have thousands of inputs and thousands of outputs, and you're able to discover really complicated relationships. What's so cool about this is basically how neural networks in our own brains are set up to learn. Once I've been given enough training data to understand the interaction between my hand and arm and keeping something balanced like this, then my model is trained and I superglue those middle knobs in my brain. Then I can introduce a totally new input I've never tried before, and I still know what to do. I don't need to be trained on every possible different type of object because my brain has drawn the boundaries. Think about that. For a long time before machine learning and neural networks, computers were just following hard-coded instructions given by humans. Now, they can learn like humans, only they can do it much faster and more comprehensively than we can. Obligatory. And that's why when I gave Jabril the challenge that would take a normal computer using brute force methods thousands of years to solve.
Yo, man. It's fast. Please tell me that your indicator is a mustache rub. And then you have whatever. And then a toothpaste. Is that it? That's it.
Jabril's machine learning algorithm just created the right boundaries and solved it in less than 3 minutes. The machine learning model requires more data than our simple version, which can solve it after like 3 sequences. But the upside is that it will eventually decode any set of signs as long as you're capturing the inputs right. And so now it was time for a real-life test. So I asked my buddy Destin to do some secretive recon work.
Okay, dude, this is the field I used to play at growing up. Today, my son is playing on the Rascals. I'm going to go film third base coaches doing their thing, and we'll plug all that data into the machine learning algorithm. These kids are yelling at me, wanting me to know what my channel is.
And the fact they didn't recognize him just proved to me that whatever was happening in this region was a totally effective disguise. And thanks to Dustin's great interviews and raw footage, we were able to get even more data to show that our methods totally worked. And while Destin just brazenly set up a tripod and filmed all these third base coaches...
Before you do that, you need to talk to him, say, hey, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, because signs are pretty secret, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. Got it.
In trouble for stealing signs.
I was a little more nervous and discreet. If you put a GoPro in a cup, you can actually just watch the footage and frame the shot real time, and it just looks like you're checking dank memes with the drink in your hand. I've actually used this trick a few times, especially on my Carnival Scam Science video. So just like with Destin's footage, it worked perfectly at the games I went to, and it was just a cool feeling once you cracked their code. Okay, steal. They're about to steal. To be able to predict exactly what was coming next. There he goes. There he goes. I knew he was gonna steal. I knew it. I hope you enjoy this excuse to learn more about machine learning as much as I did. I will put links to both versions of the app in the video description for you to check out. And of course, if there are specific rules against using technology to steal signs in your league, I am not telling you to break them. Otherwise, from personal experience, you might risk getting some very important people mad at you.
Opções favoritos. Pasta prefeitura. Próximo ao portal da pizza. Fala com ele.
Texted this clip to my wife, who wanted proof I wasn't doing anything stupid on a recent trip to the Bahamas. Now, if you're wondering what my feet are doing in shark-infested waters with a bucket of blood 20 miles away from any land, well, that comes down to a conversation I had with my friends at the Discovery Channel 6 months ago. They told me Shark Week is coming up, and they want to know what I would do if they could put me in the middle of the ocean on a boat surrounded by sharks. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to test if sharks can really smell a drop of blood in the water from a mile away. Now, before you say Mythbusters already did this, they kind of did this. As you can see, to test this, they poked their fingers and then stuck them in a barrel with these tiny lemon sharks, and since they didn't really seem to turn around and look at their fingers, they said it was busted. Now, I'm friends with both Carrie and Adam, but I think even they would admit, at least in this case, the methodology was less than scientifically rigorous. So I came up with a more robust test procedure, built some NASA-grade hardware for the experiment, hopped on a plane, and then a speedboat, and soon enough, I was 20 miles offshore of the Bahamas.
Shark. That's the first time I've ever seen a shark, like in the wild.
Science. To kick things off, I sat down with my marine biologist, shark diving expert friend, Luke Tipple, and explained my plan to him. Eventually, I planned to test just how far they could smell a single drop of blood in the water. But first, I wanted proof that they actually preferred blood over any other scent. So for my first experiment, I planned to put 4 surfboards in the water equidistant from the back of the boat. Each board would host 2 liters of a different liquid that we would pump into the ocean over the course of an hour. Then using a 3-meter radius around each board as a gauge, we would use drone footage and count how many sharks went over to check out each board. So this board would be fish oil, which I heard was a general attractant for lots of fish. Then we would have cow's blood here, then seawater here as control to make sure the sharks weren't just interested in the surfboard, and then finally urine.
I've heard from surfers that a lot of them won't pee in their wetsuit because they feel like it's going to attract a shark.
I don't know a surfer alive who doesn't pee in their wetsuit. But yes, that's definitely something that I've heard a lot.
To liberate surfers everywhere. Show that it's cool to pee in your wetsuit.
So after a bit more discussion, Luke was on board for the first of our 2 experiments.
Well, as a firm believer in the scientific method, test it out.
And then you die.
Well, depending on the results, I can't pee, the deal's off.
And so with that, we started putting the 4 boards together. We also started collecting scientific donations from the crew.
Alright, so now it's time to fill these bags.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do
Yeah.
first, pee or blood?
Yeah, you. Let's do pee.
Okay.
Let's do rock, paper, scissors for who holds the bucket and who holds the bag. Alright?
Okay, wait, I gotta strategize. Okay, I know what it is. Ready? 1, 2, 3, shoots.
Damn it.
Oh, that smells so bad. It's urine. Whoever it is, they need to hydrate, dude. This is gonna be a nightmare.
Oh, it's warm. Oh, dude, it's all in my hand. Your pouring sucks. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, that's
No, we're good.
All in the name of science.
It's a great time of day to be doing this because we have a lot of sharks. Looking down here, we got 3 or 4 lemons on the surface, and I can actually see 2 tigers down on the bottom, and that's actually a massive tiger
That is
down there.
huge.
Alright, see if you can do a better job pouring than I did.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, wow. There's a feeding frenzy.
It's fine.
What are you doing? I almost lost my hand.
I did not. I'm not going to jump out of the water.
Okay, so we've got seawater as our control, fish oil.
Have urine and cow's blood.
So while Luke is bravely swimming the 4 surfboards out and anchoring them in place in preparation for the 1-hour countdown, now is a perfect time to explain the cool tech on each board I designed and built from scratch with my buddy Sean Hodgins. For this experiment to be robust, all 4 boards need to start pumping at the exact same time after Luke has them in place. That means we need to somehow start the pumps using a radio signal from the boat. So each surfboard has a waterproof receiver box like this that also hosts the battery, a custom printed circuit board, and 2 Arduinos. Then I have the remote control, and as soon as I hit this button, they all start pumping at the same time. We know each pump is working because the corresponding yellow light is lit up. That's important because they're too far away from the boat to see if they're functioning properly. To pump the blood and pee, we're using a peristaltic pump. This is a perfect choice because it's a totally sterile way to get the blood from the bag to the ocean, since the blood never touches any sort of valve or something. It just has these rollers that sort of pinch and push the blood through the tubing in a manner that just happens to be similar to a severed artery. And so with the boards in place, it was go time.
Operation Shark Bait testing commence. 3, 2, 1. Beep. All 4 are going. We have confirmation. Everything is rolling. The experiment is underway. We'll let them go for an hour, just dripping stuff out. And yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay, my I can see blood trail as far as I can see on the blood board. I'm going to head back to the boat to put unlock the variable in this experiment.
And after 10 minutes, I was really surprised there wasn't a lot of action on any of the boards.
So far it's pretty interesting. I mean, we've shown if you have a massive cut and you're bleeding out, and there's this many sharks within like 50 yards of you, that they're kind of like, meh. So like already that's an interesting finding, right? You think a little bit of blood, and there just be a massive swarm, but that's not the case so far.
And to be clear, we weren't dealing with small quantities here. The human body contains 5 liters of blood, and after you lose 2 liters, which is the exact amount we're putting in the water, then you die. About 20 minutes in, things were still pretty quiet, especially at the fish oil, urine, and control boards. But then the blood board started attracting some smaller fish, and soon after, 1 or 2 sharks started taking notice.
Not a lot of love for my pee. I don't know why I find that kind of offensive, but I'm just a little hurt.
Eventually, with about 15 minutes left, things started getting pretty wild over by the blood board. The blood was spread out and made almost like a blood runway. So you have this surreal line of sharks swimming up this enticing blood trail one after another, only to be super disappointed to find a big piece of styrofoam.
We're almost done. 3, 2, 1. The motors have stopped. Our experiment is done. I'd just like to point out the bags have been sucked dry, so the engineering part of this experiment was flawless.
Dude, there were sharks everywhere.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and they're 2 super pissed off tigers.
And so now it's time to go in and review the footage and get a final tally for each board. And what we found was that 4 sharks went to check out the fish oil, then 0 sharks went to check out both the control and the urine. And then the blood board had a direct visit from a whopping 41 sharks. And so now that we debunked some surfing myths about urine and proved that sharks certainly had a strong preference for blood over anything we tested, the real question was just how much blood is interesting to them. And there was one part of the experimental design that was really nagging at me.
That was cow's blood, right?
That was cow's blood. You want to do human blood?
I want
don't
to try human blood.
you? Got at least 10 living, breathing blood bags around here.
It's worth noting, not everyone was as stoked as Luke and I about this idea.
Yeah, and then just draw it. We'll just have fresh blood, just mainline it, and put it in the water.
Why not? Would you be down?
I'd be down.
Moondog, what do you reckon?
Oh, look at me.
So Luke made some calls, and soon enough, we had an amazing, certified Bahamian phlebotomist on board.
I'm like, oh, that's really cool. As I pop them off.
And after some generosity from the camera crew and even Captain Scotty, we had 4 bulging bags of human blood for our second experiment.
This is my actual blood. We're to see if sharks have a taste for it. And if they do, I probably won't go freediving with them.
For the second experiment, we had 3 boards. Again, we placed the control in the middle. The board over here would pump the human blood slowly at 1 drop a minute, and then on the other side, this board would pump the blood fast, on average 1 drop every 4 seconds. We were able to do that because another cool feature for the boxes we built was that by turning this knob, you can control the flow rate, so over time, they can pump out different amounts. And because sometimes we all have to step up and just do our part, while Luke once again risked his life by placing the 3 boards, I prepared to push a button. 3, 2, 1! Alright, all of them are pumping and good to go. Now the clock's just ticking. We have like 55 more minutes to go. Let's see if the sharks notice it. 1 drop of human blood every 4 seconds may sound like a lot, and it certainly is. But it's also important to note that's 40 times less than the first experiment where we saw so much activity. In this case, halfway into experiment number 2, even though there were tons of sharks still in the area, the boards themselves were pretty quiet. We'll have to see when we look at the footage afterwards, but so far, it looks like the answer's no. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Experiment's over. And so after the full hour, we brought in the boards and once again reviewed the footage to see that over the course of an hour, 0 sharks checked out the control board, 0 checked out the slow blood pumping board, and exactly 0 sharks checked out the fast one. So this was by no means a perfect experiment, but I think it's safe to qualitatively say that if no sharks came to check out 15 drops of human blood a minute in the middle of shark-infested waters, you're probably going to be okay with a small scrape. I mean, there certainly won't be some kind of feeding frenzy with a single drop of blood from all sharks within a mile. Now that I had some first-hand data to put my mind at ease, I was willing to try diving with the sharks without a cage, but I had one final experiment. I had a theory that if we secured a 360 camera to the front of a hand spear and then shot it near some sharks, we could create the world's first really cool Matrix-like underwater bullet time effect. So I suited up and got it. And my theory proved correct on the bullet time hand spear. Because as you can see, that footage turned out really cool.
They can sense I'm a noob. I knew it. They know I'm a noob. On that note, can we call it a night? Not that.
That was amazing, man. We got him in like a feeding frenzy, and there's like 6 of them all around us. And I lived. I mean, this is shaping up to be a great day.
What I'll take home from this shoot is just more evidence of the amazing animal that sharks are, but also the ability to point people in a specific direction to say, hey, your thoughts about them are a little overblown.
This experience definitely changed my perception on sharks. I would say I respect them more after seeing their raw power up close, but at the same time, there's less of that fear that comes from ignorance. On top of all that, I didn't die. It's me. This is the brand new Guinness World Record largest ever elephant toothpaste foam experiment. In today's video, which is partially sponsored by LastPass, I'm going to walk you through everything we had to go through to get to this point, as well as some really cool side discoveries. These massive drones are attempting to plant 20 million trees from the sky. But to find out how I ended up here in the middle of this forest, we need to go back 6 months. Because that's when Mr. Beast hit 20 million subs, and someone suggested to celebrate he should plant 20 million trees. It went super viral on Reddit and Twitter, at which point someone else suggested he should team up with me and a bunch of other YouTubers to make it happen. Which got me thinking. And so with that, I made my way to Oregon to meet with Mr. Beast and his crew to plant 20 million trees.
One down, 19,999,999 more to go.
20 million trees in a 48-hour time period.
The statistics may not be in our favor, but we got grit. Aboard! Aboard!
Save it.
These guys are talking a big game, like they know what they're doing, but I'm gonna go do an impromptu pole test.
First of all, I don't love the angle. Can I just say that off the bat?
Oh no. Oh!
We've been planning all day, solid 8 hours. We're up to like 250 trees. So, I mean, it's a start. It's definitely a start. Can we just say, look who's the dirtiest?
Saw you rubbing some.
Wow. Look who's the dirtiest. Yeah. Come on, Mark. Hey, mine's super dirty. My back kills. There's a field of trees. 300. After a full day of planning. 300's less than 20 million.
So after talking it over, we decided we would play to our strengths. Jimmy was going to try and solve our problem with a tweet recruiting thousands of people, and I was going to pursue a more robotic solution. And so with that, I made my way further up the coast to Washington using a shortcut I knew to see if I could uncover a way to plant trees from the sky. But before I get into that, have you ever thought about where trees actually get their mass from? The knee-jerk reaction is to think it comes from the soil, but that can't be true, because if you have a tree in a big pot, as the tree gets bigger, the soil level doesn't go down at all. The answer, as it turns out, is that the mass comes from thin air. The clue is if you look at what the bulk of the tree is actually made of. It's almost entirely carbon. Pretend I'm a tree. Basically, a tree sees a carbon dioxide molecule floating by, then it powers up with energy from the sun using photosynthesis, then it uses that energy to rip the carbon from the oxygen, then it takes that carbon and slaps it on itself to get more swole. And the tree's like, hey humans, here's some beautiful fresh oxygen you can have back. I don't need it. So it takes the C and leaves us with the O2. That's a sweet deal. And so trees start really small, but in order to get bigger and bigger, they're just sucking more and more carbon out of the air. And so now you can see a tree and appreciate the beauty and the shade, but also that they're just these really massive vacuum bags completely stuffed full of carbon. And so I was in Washington to meet with some people who had a crazy idea that just might be the key to helping Mr. Beast and I plant those 20 million carbon vacuums.
What's up?
The company's called Droneseed, and they're only about 4 years old, and their idea is to use these massive drones to plant trees from the sky. They do this in 2 steps. First, they send out a smaller recon drone that uses lasers to create a 3D map of the terrain, and then from that they use software to find all the best spots to drop the trees to maximize their survivability. And then they create a flight path for each of the drones to fly autonomously. Then you load up the drone with a bunch of these seed pucks that you will drop from the sky. And their design is super clever too, because in each puck, represented by a hockey puck in this case, there's a special cocktail of around 6 seeds specifically chosen for the area where they're planting. And then you have nutrients, sort of like a fertilizer, that will help the seed grow and keep it from drying out. And then because you don't want a bunch of squirrels or mice just making a buffet out of all the seeds you drop, you need some way to condition them to give the whole experience just a 1-star review.
So ghost peppers, they're an olfactory and gustatory deterrent, which means if you eat it, the obvious reaction, and on the way out, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
And so,
gustatory is the euphemism for on the way out. I ate Taco Bell last night and had some gustatory issues as well.
And then once you secure the puck dropper to the drone, it's time to fly.
Light the fires, kick the tires. Dude, that's like a mini house just flying. That is wild. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's so funny to me. It really just looks like mechanized poop. And in some ways, this sort of like mimics Mother Nature, right? Because like a bird eats a seed, it flies, it poops it, and there's like nourishment around that seed, right?
yes, that's exactly what it is. Biomimicry.
This is brutal terrain. You wouldn't be wanting to walk down here. So to be able to access this from the sky is a really big deal.
After wildfires, we used to rely on Mother Nature to do reforestation for us, but due to some factors related to climate change, 40% of the time now, we're seeing tall shrubs grow back instead of big old trees that can literally suck up tons of carbon. And that's an example where drones are perfect because they can get in right away and start planting trees in the smoldering remains where it's too dangerous for humans to be on the ground. Even with only 3 drones, you could reforest an area 6 times faster than a normal planting crew.
You can nail a fleet like this with just 3, you can just scale this up. You can imagine the potential where, you have a swarm of 100 drones.
The work Drone Seed is doing is awesome. It gives me so much hope when I see people use really cool technology to solve really big problems. But they're still fine-tuning their system before they massively scale up. So they just aren't going to be able to help us plant the 20 million trees in time. Which is why we've been talking with all our YouTube creator friends for the past 5 months. And we decided if we were actually going to plant 20 million trees by 2020, we would need to bring the entire YouTube community together on this.
I'm stoked. Let's plant some trees.
I'm so excited.
It could be one of the craziest things that YouTube has ever seen. So many. We could end up with too many.
We're calling it Team Trees, and we went through a bunch of different options on how to pull this off, and eventually settled on working with the Arbor Day Foundation. They're the longest running, most well-respected tree planting nonprofit, and we made a deal with them that for every $1 we give them, they would plant 1 tree. It's basically magic, and I had to prove that to my buddy Thomas.
It's $1. I'm gonna call my buddy Zach King here.
Zach King, ooh la la.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hey Zach, we've got $1 for you.
Oh, okay. You're gonna take the $1, put it in some dirt, and then pull. Boom. You get a tree.
Oh, wow. Pretty slick.
And so despite mine and Mr. Beast's best effort, we need your help. Because to plant 20 million trees, we're really looking to raise $20 million. That's just an insane goal, especially when you only have 2 short months to pull it off. But starting today, you're gonna see the entire YouTube community come together on this like you've never seen before.
20 million trees. I am so in.
Proud members of Team Trees are filming on YouTube.
With all play, I will plant at least a couple of trees.
The reason I'm most excited about this is it feels like the end of Power Rangers when they would all assemble into the big thing and fight stuff together and do good.
This will absolutely be historic, and we need you on Team Trees. This is our chance to end this decade on a super strong note. It's a constructive way to tell the policymakers that this generation and our community on YouTube truly cares about the environment. It's basically all of us joining together to give a massive fist bump to frickin' Mother Earth. I personally will be planting 50,000 trees by donating $50,000. But that's still way less than 20 million, so join me and Mr. Beast and all your favorite YouTube creators by clicking that blue button right over there and planting as many trees as you can afford right now. We honestly need you. If you're a working adult, consider how many trees you're willing to plant to send a message. If you're a kid, talk to your parents about this. Get creative and do some chores to earn some money. Ask for some friggin' trees for Christmas. You can pick up 20-liter soda cans and then recycle them, and that's literally 1 more tree that will exist in the world than if you wouldn't have done that. This is all hands on deck, so either click that blue button or go to teamtrees.org and turn your dollars into trees. And then for like the next 2 months, make sure you like and double tap and retweet anything having to do with Team Trees and harass your favorite creators to join if they somehow haven't already. And so now, in exchange for joining Team Trees, if you've ever wondered how we really know climate change is occurring, stick with me for 2 minutes. because I'm going to break it down real simple using this column of ice. A while back, scientists went down to Antarctica and drilled out a bunch of ice cores like this. And what's cool is that because ice layers up over time, the really old ice is at the bottom and the newer ice is on top. Now, as you know, ice traps air bubbles. So as you move your way down the column, you get these little pristine pockets of air going back in time. What they found is that CO2 levels in the atmosphere naturally fluctuate from about 200 to 300. But then starting with the Industrial Revolution, we started burning way more coal, which is made from dead trees. And we started burning down forests for resources to keep pace with a growing population. The problem with both of these is we're taking all this carbon that was in the ground in these massive carbon vacuum bags, and we're putting it back into the air at a super unnatural rate. So much so that around 1950, we busted into the 300s for the first time in at least a million years. And we weren't done yet, because just 4 years ago in 2015, we broke into the 400s. When I started writing the script for this video, we were at 411. Today we're at 412. And this is the actual current data from NASA's excellent website, which does a great job laying out all the data they've gathered on climate change. A lot of my old friends at NASA played a role in collecting this data. Now here's the punchline and why all of this matters. You independently look at average temperature over the past million years and then overlay it with average CO2 in the atmosphere, they match up pretty much exactly. So this relatively sudden spike of all the CO2 in the air is not a good thing. And sure enough, right now, we are consistently breaking the hottest month on Earth records, which has a lot of knock-on effects, which will start snowballing unless we can band together and reverse the trend. And it's important to note with regards to Team Trees that 20 million trees by 2020 isn't going to cure climate change, but it's a step in the right direction and a constructive, positive way to send the message that we see the science and we care. So thanks for watching and thanks for doing your part to make a difference. I am so stoked. We totally got this. This bowling ball can get you a strike every time because after you bowl it, you simply lean in the direction you want the ball to turn. This idea has been on my bucket list for over 3 years, so today I'm going to tell you how we made it, how exactly it works, and what happens when you take it bowling, but neglect to tell the people you're bowling with about your slight advantage. So this trick ball looks and feels like a normal bowling ball, and that's because it's made from a real bowling ball. Step one on this project was to harness my inner Lincoln and Dan to see what's inside an actual bowling ball. The first thing we discovered is that they aren't symmetric. That means the center of mass isn't at the actual center point of the ball. I won't get into the physics here, but this is one factor that helps the pros curve the ball as much as they do. Next, I had my buddy Mark, who owns a machine shop, hollow out the ball using a lathe. Once that was done, we were left with 2 shells, and now I just needed to fill it with some engineering magic. And to do that, I need to get myself to London with the trusty 4-second travel montage. And the reason I needed to get to London was because this is James Bruton, and this is his house. And what you should know about James, aside from the fact that he's a mechanical, electrical engineer genius, is he used to be a toy designer. And I have so much respect for toy designers because they have to come up with really clever designs, like this guy here, where you can see all of this action powered by a single spring so it can remain inexpensive. And his super clever designs include this robot you can control using this puppet robot, or this real-life Iron Man or Hulkbuster suit, or a bunch of really cool BB-8s. I had a basic idea for the mechanism in the ball, and I knew I wanted the guts to be sort of like a BB-8. So I reached out to him, and in the spirit of full disclosure, it was his expertise that really made this whole thing possible. So if you enjoy seeing awesome stuff like this, you really need to go check out his videos and subscribe to his channel. And so after geeking out in his house for way longer than we should have, we put the ball together and headed to a proper British bowling alley for the first official test. We started at pretty low speeds just to prove we had things basically correct. Then we started getting fancy and eventually worked up to hitting some pins. That is a cool feeling. And the reason I can control the ball by leaning is because I have this little board taped to my back that has an inertial measurement unit on it that can sense the orientation. So if I lean left, it sends that command back to the ball using radio waves. And then the ball has a receiver that gets the signal to turn left, and then this Arduino, which is the brains of the operation, tells the servo motor how much to rotate, which then rotates this heavy pendulum to the left. And that radically alters the center of gravity, and it starts turning that way in response. Just like if you want to turn on a bike, you adjust your center of gravity by leaning into end of the turn. And if I want to bowl normal, I can just click this limit switch and it will ignore all inputs. But as soon as I click it again, then it will once again steer whichever way I lean. And at first we weren't really getting strikes, but that's because my technique was wrong. Hitting the pins dead straight on will tend to leave the corner pins like this. To get a perfect strike, the ball needs to approach the pin somewhere between 3 and 6 degrees from this point. And that's because at that angle, the ball hits this first pin and the normal force vector takes out all of these pins in a line. And then the ball contacts this next pin here and it takes out all of these pins in a line. And then the ball's momentum takes out the final 3. Professional bowlers get their ball to hit the pins at this side angle by curving the ball. And you kind of have to do that because if you suck at bowling like me and you can only bowl the ball straight, if you extend that straight line out, you would need to bowl from the other lane over. But technically, that's not allowed. And so at that point, your remaining strategies are either bad CGI or mechanical engineering. And we chose the latter. And once I got the angle right, we started locking in the strikes. In addition to testing our ball, we got to see the machine they use to oil the lanes, and the crazy fascinating machine that clears and resets the pin after every frame, but that's a topic for another video. And so with everything working perfectly, it was time for the final test to see how it performed in real life. So we arranged to meet some of our family friends at the local bowling alley, and at first I tried bowling normally with the controls turned off, but it turns out, without the aid of mechanical engineering, I suck at bowling. And nobody likes me. So to get my street cred back, I clicked the switch on and explained I actually had Jedi powers. And then I used said Jedi powers to steer the ball, hit some strikes, and replay the 5 minutes. And it didn't take them long to catch on to the secret that rolling strikes was just directly proportional to how much you lead. This guy stole my package, and he's about to... In his house.
Hello.
But what he doesn't know is that this is a new and improved custom-built bait package that is recording him on 4 different cameras that just released a pound of the world's finest glitter along with some other nasty surprises.
What the fuck?
But to understand how we got to this point, we need to go back 1.5 years. Because that's when someone stole a package from my porch, and the police wouldn't do anything about it even with the video footage, which made me sad. And so, drawing inspiration from one of my childhood heroes, I decided to make a bait package to lure would-be thieves, and the internet seemed to like it. But despite my best efforts, 1.7 million packages are either stolen or go missing every day.
Hello? Macaulay Culkin? No, wait. I'm sorry. It's just that Home Alone was the entire inspiration for the glitter bomb.
No, that's cool. I love that. Just that I do other things with my life, like run my website, bunnyyears.com. But seriously though, your design was good, but actually I think I can make it a little bit better.
And so as Macaulay felt, my friend Sean and I have literally spent the last 10 months designing, building, and testing a new and improved design for 2019. So today I'm going to walk you through all the upgrades and then show you what happens when you unleash 10 of these bait packages on random suburban porches all across America. We started with a complete redesign of the box to make it more streamlined and secure. For contrast, last year's design was a bit of a rat's nest. The fundamentals are still the same, where you have a battery-powered custom-printed circuit board on the bottom that has a built-in accelerometer so it can sense when it's been jostled, and then it tells these 4 phones to start recording. And these are wide-angle lenses, so as you can see, you'll be able to record the thief no matter which side they open it from. And then right here we have some fart spray, but we added a second bottle this year. So as both these motors spin cams around, not only does it spray twice as much, but we changed the formula this time around, and it is wretched.
Dude. Oh, man. Oh, it's in my mouth, man. I feel like I just ate a turd. Never done that, to be clear.
And just to prove how much worse it was, I sprayed last year's formula labeled A, and then this year's formula labeled B for 10 different people without telling them which was which.
Oh! That's like proper poo. Oh, God. He just took a dump on my face.
Oh. I still smell it.
I'm sorry, I killed Macaulay Culkin. So A or B? That
B.
B by all 10 independently agreed this year's was much worse. And then we keep spraying it every 30 seconds to ensure they get rid of the package out of their house before they realize there's 4 phones inside. This increases our chances of recovering it since we already know the package location at all times due to the GPS tracking on all the phones. But even if we somehow don't recover it, all these phones have LTE data plans, so they'll upload their footage to the cloud right away so then we can see what happened. And then we have the main course, which is this spinning cup powered by a motor underneath here, which we fill with the finest glitter we could find, which is actually biodegradable this year as a nod to our good friend, Mother Earth. We also added sound effects this year, so after both the glitter and the fart spray have successfully deployed, we start counting down.
5, 4, 3.
Nothing actually happens at the end, but they won't know that. And then finally after that, we added some fake police scanner chatter, just because it seemed like the right thing to do.
Seems the package may be in motion as well.
So as you can see, once you slip this cover over, it becomes nearly impossible to access the phones now without special tools. And so finally we've got the lid, which has these 2 holes here, which we cover with one-way film, so we can record the outside world even when the lid is on. And you'll notice that this is a total custom print. These are the fictitious Buzz 700s, named of course after Kevin's older brother. And if the thieves took just 2 seconds to actually inspect the package, they would see that all the words on the side are just slightly modified quotes from Home Alone, in addition to this amazing testimonial. And so then we just slapped on a fake shipping label and used a random barcode sticker to cover up the nightly charging port, and we were good to go. So the idea is, the bad guy comes sneaking by and then steals it off the porch, and then when they eventually remove the lid, a magnet taped inside triggers this Hall effect sensor, which tells the circuit board brain it's go time, and everything is set in motion. And as far as I'm concerned, relatively harmless, karmic justice has never looked so beautiful. So now all that was left was to find porches for all the boxes, so I sent out a call to all my followers on social media, and we received over 400 applicants who have all dealt with repeated package thefts in the past. And then from that, we narrowed the list down to just a handful, and soon we had packages out all over the country. We also set up a website so I could sit in my bat cave here and monitor all the boxes to see their current locations, record states, battery phone levels, and even check the camera feed on any box at any time. And things started out a bit rocky when we got a notification that the first box was stolen, and then we noticed it was intermittently moving all throughout the city. So while we were trying to locate it, we checked the feed and realized a UPS driver was so convinced the package was real, he scanned it and picked it up, and it was riding around in his truck. Next, when someone else picked up the box, we didn't have the lid seal fully worked out yet, so as they were walking around, glitter started to spill out.
Oh, look at that. There's glitter coming out of it. Oh, it's totally skin. Yo, Nick!
Which is, as they say,
Thank you very much. Giveaway. It's totally a scam. When you open it, it's gonna explode with glitter.
This lady took it off a porch, but opened it upside down. As soon as she heard the countdown timer, though, she rushed it back to the porch she stole it from, just in time for nothing to happen. But then the thefts began to pile up, and we started hitting our stride.
Oh my god. Give me that. I don't know. Let me put it back. Where is that? It's a mess. Recovery sequence initiated.
Maybe in motion as well.
Stuff's all over the sparkle. Look at this.
She opened it. Yeah, it's like, remember that money open, money turns blue. That's not a white guy.
Yeah, but all that look at and the smell. It stinks and inside the stuff. Shut up.
Oh, that was open it and throw it out.
Operation Super Nasty Fart initiated. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Hello?
Dead, bro.
What is it? No, it's still a speaker.
Yeah.
Dude, there has to be still something in there, right?
Hey, good
No, dude, what's it?
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, dude. No.
After we tracked down this package and recovered it by the dumpster, we walked by the store and they were sweeping and spraying Febreze, which felt amazing.
Hey, I bought you some headphones. I bought you some Bose headphones. Okay? Some really good ones.
Surprise, mother.
Operation Whoever Smelt It Dealt It initiated. Operation Butt Trumpet initiated.
Oh. Alright. Get it, okay. Smells like in here.
And in the middle of all this, something happened that I still can't wrap my head around. One of the volunteers we sent a package to, who obviously knows my channel and follows me on social media, who I even interviewed to make sure he seemed legit, decided it would be a good idea to steal my package from me and never had any intention of either putting it out on his porch or sending it back to us. After a week of us being really nice and trying to work with him, he effectively admitted as such and then blocked and ghosted me. And it's just like, bro, if you're gonna steal from someone, don't pick the dude who just spent a year and a half of his life avenging the theft of a $5 Amazon package. If I'm willing to get that petty over something I could easily reorder, what do you think I'm gonna do to the guy who steals the outcome of that year and a half of work? I quit my job at NASA to make YouTube videos, and I only make 12 of them a year, so I have plenty of time, and I love to obsess over these little details. Plus, even though this is more of a science channel than a prank channel, I love coming up with these ideas, like when I took this Freddy Krueger action figure and taped it to the back of my wife's car right in front of the backup camera. And so after a little detective work, I discovered he gave us his real name and phone number, but he shipped it to his buddy's address. So I found his real address and then did two relatively harmless things. The first is I've heard once the Scientologists have your contact info and know you're even remotely interested, they will follow you the rest of your life. And so since I had all his contact info, hypothetically, I might have gone on their website and said I was very interested in learning more, and then ordered $300 worth of their starting course material so they know he's a very high-value contact worth keeping track of. And the second thing was, I designed over 10 custom postcards just for him. For example, he's from Texas, so I thought a thank you note for his $500 donation to Texans for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign would be nice. Or this registration confirmation for the upcoming furry convention. But the trick is, while I addressed it in his name, I went on Google Maps and looked up his neighbors' addresses, and hypothetically, I might have accidentally sent them to a random assortment of houses around him. A lot of these are great because it's the exact type of thing where the more you deny it, the more guilty you look. So some of these will inevitably be hand-delivered to his mailbox by his neighbors who spot the air, and he'll always be second-guessing just how many more there were and who's silently judging him at the neighborhood potluck. Now, I want to mention we encountered good people out in the world too, who were trying to actually keep our boxes from being stolen. For example, this woman did that, but even still, the package was stolen just 30 minutes later by a professional porch pirate who knew exactly how to cover up her face. But then we said, hold up, roll that tape back. Unbelievably, she has the same body type and owns the exact same shoes and pants as that Good Samaritan. So we turned the footage over to the police to see if they too could appreciate the coincidence. And it just goes to show you that your conception of who a porch pirate is might be totally off. I'm just kidding. This was a super nice lady who took the package in for her neighbor. But it got us thinking, and instead of just always punishing the bad guys, we wanted to try and reward the good guys. So in some cases, we left it by an apartment mailbox, and we changed the label to a real name and left tons of contact information, like phone number and email, all over the label. And quite a few people took the package back to their house, but instead of opening it, they called to tell us they had our package because they were worried someone else would take it. And so instead of glitter and fart spray, I gave them $400 because that was the opportunity cost for them when they made the right choice. Thank you for being one of the good ones, man. Others, however, didn't make the call.
What the fuck? Oh my god! Damn, I was just about to try to find this dude too. Damn!
15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Damn.
Activation complete. Initiated.
Hello?
Sound is one of my favorite physics topics to discuss because it becomes so much easier to understand if you just have the right mental model. The key is to understand that the air all around us is a fluid, like water, just way less dense. For example, you could see the loud sound waves coming from the revolver Destin is shooting here. My friends at Bose supported this video, so I created a simple demo that would show the fundamentals of how they were able to achieve the insane amounts of noise cancellation in their headphones. I'll first turn on this speaker that is playing a tone of 500 hertz. You can hear Hear it in this mic. Then if I turn on a second speaker playing the same tone, the waves will combine just like two waves crossing in the water, and it will be twice as loud. But if I reverse the polarity on one of the speakers, it will flip the wave upside down, and now instead of combining, the waves will cancel each other out, and the sound is much quieter than if only one of the speakers was on. This is the principle behind how they achieve noise canceling, like in the headphone 700s here. They measure and then play back a flipped pressure wave of the jet engine, which is why it goes so quiet. And it's really hard to demonstrate this without trying it on yourself, but this should give you an idea of what their engineers are capable of.
With this leaf blower, this is what my voice sounds like on the camera mic. But if you were to call me and I answered on these headphones, this is exactly what my voice would sound like.
These things are just the best, especially when traveling. They've got a battery life of up to 20 hours, which has always been way more than enough for me, but even if the battery somehow dies, you could still use them as passive wired headphones. They have a touch-sensitive side to control your music without pulling out your phone, or you could use voice commands with Alexa, Google Assistant, or Siri. And perhaps the coolest feature is conversation mode, which uses 6 mics to pass in all the sound around you to give you superpower hearing so you can actually talk to people without needing to take your headphones off. And of course, in addition to headphones, Bose does speakers, such as the S1 here, or their smart portable home speaker, both of which are ultra portable after charging. I really do love these things, and I use them all the time. So thanks to Bose for making the coolest possible gift you can give someone this holiday season, and thanks to you for watching. That's the richest man in the world, and that's the burger I just made him. But there's a catch. The patty in that burger is made from this stuff. And the reason I can eat it raw is it's made entirely from plants. As you guys know, every year I dedicate one of my 12 videos to showcase how clever people are using science and technology to change the world for the better. So for example, 2 years ago was a paper centrifusion microscope that could diagnose malaria for 51 cents versus $10,000 for traditional equipment. And then last year was a magical powder that helps poorer countries turn contaminated muddy water into clear drinking water. That's also when I first met Bill, and he earned my forever respect after I microwaved up some pizza rolls for him, and he ate them like a champ. I've been loosely following the progress of plant-based meat for a couple years now, and allegedly it looks and tastes like meat, yet it's made from plants. Now, at the top of this video, I feel like I should start with a confession. I eat meat. Like, kind of a lot. I've had some form of meat at pretty much every meal since I was a kid. My favorite genre of food is barbecue. And so be that as it may, as a firm believer in the scientific method, I feel like it's time for me just to really buckle down and get to the bottom of this plant-based meat thing. And so today on my quest for answers, I'm looking at 3 main questions. Number 1, how does it taste? And not just that, but how does it look and feel and smell? How successfully does it trick my brain into thinking this is real meat? Number 2, is it good for me? If it does trick my brain, what the heck is in it? Is it just some kind of like lab chemical concoction? And also, how does it compare to like the protein from a real burger? And number 3, is it good for the planet? And on this one, I have a hunch that it is, but is it like, meh, that's a little better? Or is it like 100 times better? Now, I should say a big motivation for me, and something I think even my fellow meat eaters could agree on, is that the concept of factory farms isn't great. The whole cows that have never seen a blade of grass thing, and pigs, which by most accounts are smarter than dogs, that live their entire lives indoors on crowded concrete. These factories are efficient. They're optimized for driving down costs, not for animal well-being. And I'm not trying to be a downer, it's just something I don't like to think about when I'm eating my In-N-Out burger or Chick-fil-A. And it's a lame excuse, but I feel like I sort of never have had a good alternative option. I mean, historically, this is a veggie burger, and nothing about this works as a burger for me. But in recent years, the strategy strategy shifted to target people exactly like me. Basically try and make it as close to real meat as possible, which reduces friction for trying a plant-based option. So their goal is, if I'm going meatless at the summer barbecue, instead of a quinoa salad, I can still enjoy the full experience of a burger with my friends. And so on that note, let's get right into question number 1. Throw this puppy on the grill. Sizzle. Definitely sounds like a burger and even smells like it. And you're getting like the fat dripping down, which is causing the flames to come up. So far the experience feels pretty analogous to just grilling a burger. When I lick the fork, it definitely tastes like there was meat on this fork. Alright, this cuts and feels exactly like a real burger. But before I officially taste it, I kind of want to know exactly what's in there. And to do that, I'm going to fly out to the 2 companies who are the leader in this space, Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. At Beyond Meat, the first thing they showed me were the labs where they do all their research. Are these actors or these are real scientists?
These are scientists, yeah.
This feels like Jurassic Park, you know, where they're like giving you the tour. And right out of the gate, they put my mind at ease and showed me a tray of all the main stuff that makes up their burgers. Apparently, they work on not just the taste, but they have teams of researchers working on the texture, color, the smell, the grilling sound, even the same amount of calories and protein as a meat burger. Their goal is to make it as frictionless as possible for people like me to make the switch. So they have these for the color, coconut and sunflower oil for the fat so it sizzles on the grill, potatoes for carbohydrates, and then these for the protein, the majority coming from yellow peas. These burgers are better for you because they have no cholesterol, but they do have saturated fat from the coconut oil, so you shouldn't think of this as healthy as like a plain salad with no dressing. After getting the full tour, I was feeling pretty good, so it was time for the real test in the kitchen. I've intentionally kept my taste buds virgin. Okay, great. I haven't tasted it, and I had opportunities, but like, no, I want to wait. No pressure. But next week, I'm going to meet Bill Gates. Yeah. And I have to cook for him. You're like a professional chef, right? I am. In the next like 20 minutes, you need to transfer all that knowledge from your brain into mine, okay? We started with their Italian sausage, made of course just from plants, and Chef Chris showed me some power moves to impress Bill with on the grill. I'm so scared. Cheers. Okay, cheers. Even putting flavor aside, I think Bill will be okay with a little bit of a juice. There's no way I would have guessed I wasn't actually eating real meat. That's pretty good. Cheers. Cheers. That's really good. I need one more taste. It's freaking good. Thank you. Next up was their burger, which it turns out was equally amazing. Genuinely, when you can surround it with burger stuff, it's really hard to tell. There's like a way to tell. My next trip was to Impossible Foods, and they actually let me make a burger myself just from the ingredients in these bowls.
So the first thing that we're going to do is add the water to soy protein, and then we're going to add the potato protein.
Okay.
So the next thing we're going to put in is our magic ingredient, which do you know what this is?
Red number 5. This is food.
So this is our magic ingredient. It's called heme, which is short for hemoglobin. Heme is responsible for making meat taste like meat. That's found in every living plant and animal. You can get heme from soy plants.
I see.
You don't have to get it from animals.
Next, we added the cellulose-based culinary binder to hold everything together, and then finally, the coconut and sunflower oils.
Have you done any pastry work in your life?
Tons of pastry.
You're gonna like fold. That's much.
All my pastry work's shining through.
You literally just made the Impossible Burger yourself.
Like five little cups.
5 bowls, yeah.
One of them was water.
One of them was water.
So now I think it's time to cook one of these up.
96% of the folks who are ordering our product are self-identified meat eaters.
I'm definitely your target demo. I grew up, like, if the meal didn't have meat in it, it wasn't a meal.
when it delivers in that same characteristic that meat does, it really proves the point that we're providing a no compromises alternative for those meat eaters out there to make a different choice.
This raised an interesting point. Meat has been cleverly marketed with being a real man because real men need their protein.
That's what a man eats. Made from stuff guys need. Eat like a man.
But the truth is, even meat eaters like me get roughly half their protein a day from plants by eating things that contain some kind of beans, peas, nuts, or whole grains like corn, rice, and oats. In fact, many high-performance athletes are switching to a plant-based diet because studies have shown it can help reduce measures of inflammation by almost 30% in just 3 weeks, and inflammation makes it harder to recover after a workout. So if a plant-based diet is good enough for Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kyrie Irving, Lewis Hamilton, Venus and Serena Williams, Nate Diaz, and a growing butt ton of others, it's probably good enough for me and my weekly rec league soccer game.
Ballin' like Curry.
You can ultimately utilize this in any way you would use traditional ground beef.
So tacos, lasagna, meatballs,
name it.
They're so good. This is a plant-based burger, and look at the mess I'm making. So obviously, I thought their burgers were also really good, but I felt like I wanted a larger sample size before I felt truly confident feeding Bill. So I invited some friends to a local restaurant that serves Impossible Burgers. And the thing is, you can't always trust adults because they might just change their answer to be nice. Kids, on the other hand, are brutally honest. So we ordered them plant-based burgers too, but might have neglected to mention it to them beforehand.
What do you think?
It's really good.
There's no meat in that burger.
You're right.
Plants. That was a plant burger. You ate a plant burger.
It just tastes like extra juicy.
And so, feeling more confident than ever, it was time to visit Bill, put my culinary skills to the test, and see if he could help me answer my final question. So I'm back in Bill's kitchen. He's gonna be here in an hour, and I need some groceries. Bill, hey, good to see you. So I've been working hard in your kitchen. Perfect. And I kind of wanted to talk to you about plant-based meat, and I thought maybe we could try them out as well. Sure. But as a control, I know you're a big fan of Dick's Burgers, so to kind of cleanse the palate, I thought we could just take a bite.
That's the real thing.
The real thing? As a non-Seattle native, I've got to say, I think this may be an acquired taste.
Yeah, you get used to a certain burger.
And so now it's time for my cooking. What do you think?
It's quite good. I mean, that's light years away from what they used to make.
Like the traditional veggie burgers?
Right. You know, the quality's going to keep getting better.
Mm-hmm.
The plant-based guys are not done inundating. Eventually, they claim you won't be able to tell the difference.
Next up was my killer bratwurst.
Wow. Well, that's pretty good.
And at this point in my quest, I felt like I had a pretty good lock on questions 1 and 2. So I asked him about number 3.
The agriculture sector is about 18% of overall emission, but livestock is about half of that 18%.
Wow.
And almost all of that is beef.
Is this like cow farts? Cow burps?
Slightly more burps than farts, but it's a mix of those two.
To put that into perspective, that means that sector alone is responsible for more greenhouse gases than all the cars, trucks, trains, ships, and planes combined. Turns out, it takes a lot of stuff to make a cow.
Very inefficient, particularly beef. It's almost 8 to 1. You use 8 calories to feed that cow for every calorie of meat you get out because you're building bone and respiration for that cow.
Now, this was a really good point I hadn't fully considered. If you think about it, as humans, we're really solar powered. We eat plants, but they get their energy from the sun. Then you might be like, we also eat animals though. But they get their energy from plants too, which again, get their energy from the sun. So when it comes to getting our energy from the sun, animals are an inefficient middleman. We get on average 10% of our calories or energy in a day from meat. That might sound reasonable until you look at the amount of resources it takes to make that meat compared to the other 90%. If you combined all the land in the US dedicated to raising animals, you would get an area like this. And then plus this much more to grow the crops needed to feed those animals. Now And remember, all of that is for the middleman, for 10% of our daily energy. Now compare that to the amount of land needed for crops we actually eat ourselves directly. That relatively small chunk of land is where the overwhelming majority of our personal energy comes from. And it's not just land resources, but water as well. To end up with 24 hamburger patties, it requires the amount of water you see in this pool. That same amount of water could make 75 loaves of whole grain bread and 30 jars of peanut butter. So if I made myself a delicious peanut butter sandwich, which has nearly the identical amounts of both calories and proteins compared to this patty, and then I ate 2 a day, the meat would last me a little over a week, and the sandwiches would last me a little over a year. So that's the same amount of resources used, same amount of calories and protein to me per serving. One just lasted me a year longer because it's a much more efficient energy transfer method. This is why a plant-based diet is a way more efficient use of natural resources. We could feed an additional 3.5 billion people worldwide if all countries just ate the stuff they fed to animals. And here's why that fact matters.
Particularly as people get richer, they tend to eat more meat. If we don't do anything, this sector will actually grow over time.
So you're saying not just the fact that there's more people and a larger population, but as people move up towards the middle class, they want to consume more meat.
And you can certainly see that this is true when you look at the amount of meat consumed over the past 50 years. Given the resources required, a trajectory for meat consumption like this is simply unsustainable. A few decades ago, meat was considered a luxury product, but now it's a commodity for a growing number of people. In fact, the demand is growing so much, it now makes sense for farmers in the Amazon just to burn it down and to turn that forest into grazing land for animals. We've irreversibly lost 20% of the Amazon so far, and that's a double gut punch, because now not only is that more cow farts adding to climate change, but when you burn those trees, all the carbon stored inside them goes back into the atmosphere as the greenhouse gas CO2.
One of the great tragedies about climate is that it's the poorest in the world, the farmers who live fairly near to the equator, that all this heat and flooding and droughts, they're going to suffer by far the most. If you're just trying to get people to cut back, don't eat meat, don't drive to work, don't take trips, it's such a dramatic set of sacrifices that everybody has to engage in, that without innovation, we're probably going to go way past the 2 degrees.
And that last part is the silver lining. Plant-based meat is the exact kind of innovation Bill's referring to here. And I'm optimistic because as the demand for plant-based meats goes up, the price will come down, much lower than actual meat. So then not only will the experience be identical to eating meat, but it's better for you, better for animals, and much better for the planet. Oh, and it also costs half as much. It just becomes a really easy decision for people to switch in massive numbers. Alright, so what does this all mean? Now that I've completed my quest for answers, where do I stand? And I'll say, it still makes me really uncomfortable to think about these factory farms, or the Amazon being burned down to make room for more cows, but at the same time, I can't really blame these poor remote farmers who know nothing about what a greenhouse gas is for just trying to feed their family. As long as the demand for meat continues to grow, there will be an incentive to be not cool to our mutual friend, Mother Earth. So the most effective thing we can do is try and reduce that demand. So after all this, I'm not a vegan. I'm not even strictly on a plant-based diet, but I have reduced the amount of meat I consume by more than half, and I feel great. Importantly, I've broken from that weird mindset that for it to be considered a true meal, it has to have some form of meat. So if any part of this video rang true to you, I would say don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. You can find plant-based meat options in thousands of restaurants, and even at Burger King and Carl's Jr. Most grocery stores have a whole section dedicated to them, so you can substitute it into your favorite home-cooked meal. And remember, it doesn't have to be binary, like you either eat no meat or you're frickin' Ron Swanson. If a bunch of people did Meatless Monday, for example, that would have a huge impact on demand. Some of the challenges we face globally can feel pretty daunting, and so I love seeing clever people innovating on the front lines, trying to make it as easy as possible for the rest of us to make the right choices. It gives me hope about our future here together and inspires me to want to do my part.
Actually thought of all the toughest climate problems that livestock was going to be the toughest. Now with these companies and other ones coming along in this space, I'd say steel and cement are now the two that I'm still scratching my head.
Well, if anyone's going to be scratching their head to solve the problem, I think humanity is grateful. Bill Gates is the one doing it. So on behalf of, I don't know, the world, we appreciate the efforts you're making in this. I have some celebratory pizza rolls last year. Actually, they're frozen. You don't want to.
Thank you.
It's just a prop. I'll spare you.
Trick me, Macaroni!
Now that I've completed my quest for answers, where do I stand? And I'll say, it still makes me really uncomfortable to think about cooked meat Swanson. It doesn't have to be binary, like you either eat no meat or you're frickin' Ron Swanson.
Bumibili rin ang tatapir. Opa, mamãe. Eu e a mamãe se completam, né, mamãe? Fica a vida toda.
Não,